Just before the holidays, I ran into a brewing festival and competition that I wanted to share with you all. I saw this really great competition that was focused on female brewers and showing off their skills. I then reached out to Jenn McPoland, the organizer of the SheBrew festival and competition, and she agreed to join me and talk about her brewing history, the great club that she's a member of, and, of course, the great festival and competition, today on Homebrewing DIY. Building recipes and taking good notes are two of the key fundamentals of making great beer. This is one of the first things that you learn when becoming a new brewer. I started taking notes on a sheet from my extract kit and then quickly moved to brewing software. I've tried many different types of brewing software, and then I found Brewfather. This is the one piece of software that you need for recipes and very detailed brew day notes, as well as fermentation notes. Brewfather also integrates with some of the topics that we discuss on this show, like the till hydrometer, the ice spindle, and ferment track. You need no other piece of software than Brewfather. One of the best parts of Brewfather is that you can try it for free. All you need to do is head to our website, homebrewingdiy.beer, and click on the Brewfather banner to sign up for free today. Once again, that's homebrewingdiy.beer and sign up for Brewfather today. Have you ever wanted to make a podcast? Do you have a subject you want to discuss with listeners? Do you even know where to start? Well, if you want to make a podcast and you want to get started now, I could not recommend Anchor enough. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. And you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hey, look, I shopped around for a place to post my podcast, and Anchor was the easiest, most streamlined experience you could ask for. So if you're looking for a place for your new podcast, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And welcome back to Homebrewing DIY, the show that takes on the do-it-yourself aspect of homebrewing. Gadgets, contraptions, and parts. This podcast covers it all. Today we're talking to Jenn McPoland of the SheBrew Homebrewing Beer Competition. I'm really excited to discuss with her all of the cool things that they're doing for this competition, a bit about the club that she's in, and really just homebrewing in general. Last, I'd like to just take a quick moment to really thank some of our new patrons. We have John and Cody, some of our newest patrons just this week at the base level. And we also have the Communicate Influence podcast at communicateinfluence.com. She also gave to us on Patreon, and you should really check out her show. It's some good stuff, especially if you want to learn a little bit more about kind of getting yourself out there. Last, Clay decided to give to us at the supporter level, and I have to say that that's really something special. Clay, thank you so much. You're going to get a really great gift from us, and I really look forward to meeting you sometime soon. The other way that you can support the podcast is to give us a review. You can head over to ratethispodcast.com/homebrewingdiy. There's different links there that you can do Stitcher, you could do podchaser.com and Apple Podcasts, and it gives you a really great way to get to those review pages and write us a review. In doing so, you actually help other people find us. And then the last way that you can help support the show is head over to homebrewingdiy.beer. If you head over there, you'll actually find some links to Brewfather and Adventures in Homebrewing, and if you use those links, it actually lets them know that we sent you, and then they support the show as well. Last, I'd like to dive into a bit of some social media news. If any of you follow us on Instagram, we actually did a really cool Instagram competition about a week ago, depending on when this podcast episode actually gets released. But we actually gave away an Inkbird instant read thermometer as part of our Instagram feed. And I'd like to thank Matt Blevin for actually being the winner of that thermometer. Matt, great drawing, and it was really great to talk to you online and kind of get to know you a bit and enjoy the new thermometer. I'm really looking forward to the photos of your brew day with that cool new gadget. Also, if you would like to look for some of those giveaways that we're doing or just really interact with us on social media, head over to Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for the handle @HomebrewingDIY. We're on all the socials. All right, so now let's just dive into our episode today. Today we're going to be talking to Jenn McPoland, and we're going to be talking about the SheBrew competition. Hi, I'd like to welcome Jenn McPoland to the show. She's started and is the organizer of the SheBrew Festival and the SheBrew Homebrewing competition. And I'd like to welcome her to the show. So, hi, Jenn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Excellent. I think maybe the best place to start would be, We'll get into the festival here in a minute, but let's just get a quick background of how you got into homebrewing.
It's funny. I've been a beer drinker for a long, long time, and a friend of mine was in the Oregon Brew Crew, which is the homebrewing club that I've been a part of for a long time. And one day she was like, "Hey, my club's having a beer appreciation class. Do you want to take it with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would totally want to be into that." And it ended up being a BJCP class, which obviously is a beer judge certification course, which is not a beer appreciation class. And each week they would talk about a different beer style, and then they would talk about a different brewing technique. And after about the third week, I was like, "Lady, you got to teach me how to brew because I don't know what they're talking about." And that was 2005. So I've been homebrewing ever since.
Awesome. And I have to admit, a BJCP class is definitely jumping past the appreciation level for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a member of the oldest homebrewing club in Oregon, and could you tell me a bit about that club's history?
Absolutely, yeah. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. Actually, there's a little bit of controversy. Some people say it's actually the 39th, and some people say it's the 40th because nobody's around from the very beginning anymore, but we're just going with 40. We have been in Portland the whole time, and Steinbart's, FH Steinbart's is one of our local homebrew supply shops, and it actually just celebrated its 100th year anniversary. So it's been selling homebrew supplies for 100 years, and the owner of that, John DeBenedetti, was one of the founding members of the Oregon Brew Crew. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger over the years. We have about 300 members right now, I believe. A lot of really active members. We run some big competitions. We do some scholarships, lots of festival organization and also support. There's just a whole ton of stuff. The purpose of the club really is around a homebrewing education, though, and beer education.
That's awesome. 300 members is a really large club, especially on a local level. What does a typical meeting look like if I were, off the street, came to your club and came in? What would I expect to see?
Well, it depends on if it's an in meeting or an out meeting. So typically, every other month we have an in meeting or an out meeting. An out meeting is usually at a newer brewery, so we'll go and support, and we'll bring the whole club, and if they're big enough to hold us. And we'll have the meeting there. But all of our in meetings, they basically start with, we have a small potluck that we do every time, and then members bring their home brew, some of them just in bottles to get feedback, and we actually have feedback forms that people can try them and give them feedback on, or they'll bring whole kegs to be able to share, either just share with the group in general, but then also get feedback on. And then we'll talk about whatever business we have, whether it's a competition coming up or a festival coming up. And then after that, we have an education portion. And that could be anything from Ben at Breakside coming to talk about hops, about hop utilization, or somebody from Imperial Yeast coming to talk about hop or yeast propagation. There's always an education topic, though.
Yeah, I did a show a few episodes ago talking about homebrew clubs, and really, I have to admit, and I'm a member of a homebrew club as well, that the education that you get from that community can't really be replicated online. It's just it's an amazing experience to hey, try beers with your friends, but then also learn with your friends as well.
Yeah, and some of our biggest professional brewers actually started out in the Oregon Brew Crew. The Widmer brothers, Alan Sprintz of Hair of the Dog, Jamie Floyd from Ninkasi, Shane Watterson from Level, just a lot of local brewers. And they're still, most of them are still members.
That's awesome. It's cool to see people, even after they go pro, still staying active in the homebrew scene. I know that you always talk to professional brewers, and once it becomes their job, they tend to not homebrew anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about the SheBrew Festival and competition. I guess we'll start with the festival and how that kind of came about and kind of how that became a thing.
Absolutely. So it was about 6 years ago. I was on the board that year, and our competition chair, Jamie, her wife worked for the Human Rights Campaign and was looking for a new fundraising idea. And she's actually the one that came up with SheBrew. So basically what we'd done is we'd solicited local brewers to donate beer, and we sold tickets to it. So it was a handful of local brewers that donated, and then it was 10 female homebrewers. So you bought a ticket, you went in, you got to try some of the pro brewers, but the idea was to try each one of the home brews and actually vote on people's choice. And it was meant as just a small fundraiser for the Human Rights Campaign. And then it just has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger as the years have progressed. In fact, this year we actually had to move our venue again because we had outgrown the last one. I believe we're expecting 1,500 people this year.
Wow, that's a really great size for a festival, specifically a very specific kind of festival, right? What would you say is the main focus of the festival when it comes to obviously Human Rights Campaign is a great organization, and really, what is the kind of message that it's trying to say?
Well, it's celebrating diversity and celebrating women in brewing. The other really great thing is, because I'm also in charge of curating all the beer for the whole fest, is each year we've had more and more actually female brew professional beers. The first year I think we only had one. The second year I think we had two. Last year we had 22. This year I have 31 on deck, and they're all local female professional brewers.
That's just an amazing thing to see, and such growth so quickly is also really awesome to see, right?
Yeah, and we've continued to have 10 homebrewers at the fest, so we do the Homebrew Invitational every year at the festival as well, which is pretty awesome.
That's awesome. And so what is that? You take 10 female homebrewers that brew a beer just for the festival, nothing to do with the competition, correct?
Well, it can be what they've entered in the competition as well, just as long as they bring a 5-gallon corny of one of their beers to the fest. We actually have a special thing this year, though. Melissa, who runs Queen of Beers, which is the only other all-female homebrew competition, her and I have been cross-promoting our 2 comps for the last year or so. And the winner of Best of Show, that was just last month, Catherine Gooding, we have invited her to bring down her Best of Show beer and brew it and have it on for the festival.
That's awesome. And the Queen of Beers Festival, where's that held and located?
That's out of Sacramento.
Time of year? Okay.
Yeah, it's Sacramento, and it's in December.
Okay, so very similar in time, because you guys are in February, right?
Yeah, it's in February because the festival is always held in March, which is Women's History Month, and the competition is always held the Saturday before. Okay.
And then, so that if you had the competition winner, for example, the Best in Show beer, and they wanted to bring that keg of that, they would be able to do so? Or what's the reason?
Well, it's the first time we've done it. And the nice thing is Catherine's really close. She's actually in Washington, because it is a national competition. We typically get entries from, SheBrew typically gets entries from more than 20 states. And it just happened to work out really well that Catherine was close enough by for us to be able to invite her to actually bring her beer down. And she was really excited to do so. Had it been somebody in Utah, that might have been a little bit more challenging.
You say that, but I'm actually from Utah, so.
Well, the SheBrew's Best of Show winner the first year was from Utah.
That's awesome. Who was it?
Amanda Weinelman. She won with a lambic.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually funny you say that. I do live in Colorado now, but I was born and raised and actually started homebrewing in Utah, and really because of Utah's laws, right? I couldn't buy kegged beer, so I started making my own kegged beer because that's what I wanted. So kind of the story there.
That's awesome. I love it.
So how many years have you been doing the competition and the festival?
This will be the 6th year for the festival, and this will be the 4th year for the competition.
Awesome. And, what kinds of beers would you say are some memorable beers that you can think of from either past festivals or past competitions that some people have made that have kind of been like, wow, this is an amazing experience?
There's been so many amazing beers. I mean, last year, I think she took 2nd place for Best of Show, was just an amazing Schwartz beer. Twice we've had Best of Show end up being a cider, which was really interesting. So we've actually decided that we're going to have 2 Best of Shows. We'll have one for ciders and berries and one for beers this time. And both of those were incredible. And some of the professional brewers have just done amazing work. We had a green glitter beer, which was a Belgian from one of our brewers, that it was all 100% gluten-free, and it was really tasty and really crazy looking. And then everything, there was a lime pastry beer last year, and then just some phenomenal just base like IPAs and porters. It just really runs the gamut.
That's awesome. It's funny is that I would say a couple years ago, kind of glitter beer became a pretty big thing, and then it's kind of died off. I haven't, this year has kind of been the year I haven't really seen a glitter beer, and so
I haven't either.
Yeah, but funny, it's I can't throw a dead cat and not hit a hazy IPA, right? So
absolutely,
it's kind of funny how beer trends, like you'll have something that's a flash in the pan, and then the hazy IPA sticks around and doesn't go anywhere, right? And so
sours were like that too.
Yeah, totally. But and sours, to be honest, when we're talking about who's paying big bucks for beers, it's still the sours, right? If I were to go to, if I'm going to pay top dollar for a beer, it's probably a sour or a barrel aged stout. So it's just kind of the industry and kind of where it's at. But I also feel like, and this is just a personal opinion, and I'll probably get an email about this, but my personal opinion is that sours and the barrel-aged beers are kind of taking on the wine aspect of beer, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And then the hazy IPAs are the everyday beer. That's just kind of, I think that's where it's kind of falling. But like I said,
the hazies, there's such a larger market of non-beer drinkers that will drink a hazy.
Yeah, totally. I'm part of a homebrew club, and when we sit down, we actually have an entire section of our club, of our meeting, that ends up being the barrel aged section, because we get so many barrel aged beers. We have one guy that his entire mantra, I would say, is that he only brews barrel aged beers. He doesn't, but it just kind of feels that way.
Right. No, totally. Well, and I've seen it too change, because I'm also I'm one of the head stewards for the Oregon Beer Awards. And just watching over the last couple of years, like all these different categories get added: the hazy, the juicy, the pastry beers that just were not a thing before, and they're just, as they become popular, it becomes a category.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and commercial categories are so much different than the homebrew categories, right?
Oh,
and and so it's kind of like, we do Great American Beer Festival here in Colorado, and it's you go every year, and you see the categories, and you're like, that wasn't a category last year. So it changes year to year when it comes to commercial beer, just because trends are so quick. It's kind of crazy to see.
Sometimes it sticks, though, because you think about like black IPAs, or just all the range of IPAs was never part of the BJCP until it became a thing, and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And then even BJCP, the last iteration of that added multiple categories of beers that didn't exist before.
Yeah, well, I remember in 2015 when they had to add just the different kinds of IPAs to deal with what had come out from, but the refresh of BJCP isn't as often, and so I feel like, you kind of want my personal opinion, and once again I'll probably get an email about this, is that BJCP is kind of once it hits there, it's actually really it hasn't become a trend. It's actually become a style, and so because it doesn't get refreshed as often, I think that the bar is a bit higher, because the idea is that if you're homebrewing, you're trying to imitate styles that are in the commercial world, and that's why the BJCP exists. Whereas like commercial beers are usually trying to push the trend into something that's commercially viable. So.
Yeah, because everybody wants the next new thing.
Exactly. We always want the next new thing. And to be honest, when I brew, I'm trying to always brew the next new thing, right? Wait till BJCP has an entire Kvike category. It's going to happen.
Oh, nice.
It'll happen.
We had one of those at the last Fall Classic.
Exactly.
I was like, I actually know what that is. Oh.
Yeah. So with the festival and the competition, I think that one of the really great parts of that competition is the fact that it's really inclusive and pushing a lot of diversity. And I'm part of a homebrew club, and when I go to our homebrew club, and I'm sure that most people, specifically that listen to my show, I could tell you, looking at my stats, it's 95% men listen to this show. From personal experience alone, for me, women and those that identify as women, they make a small percentage of the overall brewers in the commercial world and in the homebrewing world. And so if you're a club president, or you're, a member of a club, what can we be doing to, be more inclusive towards women and encouraging them to attend our meetings?
Well, partially just getting them involved, like getting them judging, getting them, confident in that they do know what they're talking about. Because oftentimes, women are oftentimes better judges, and you'll probably get emails about that too. But I would also say that a lot of women are more creative when it comes to brewing. For me, it actually is my creative outlet. I like to brew something crazy. I won Best of Show one year with a rhubarb Berliner Weiss. And just once you get a woman that's brewing, to encourage her to encourage others. Last year, our board of directors for the Oregon Brew Crew was over 50% female, and our president was a woman. And we've only had 2 women presidents in our 4 years, and both of those have been in the last 6 years, but still, the more you can just encourage them to just volunteer and get them to understand that they have a great palate and they have awesome ideas. But so often, it's like they come with the husband or whatever, and they don't think that that's something that they can do. But the more women they see doing it, the more they feel like they can. It's been the same thing with professional brewers. Portland is obviously a really big beer city, but to have as many women in breweries as we do now versus even 3 years ago, it's incredible. And so much of that comes from they see other women doing it and go, well, I could do that too. If she can do it, I can do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was I've tried to get my wife to be part of my brewing. But she's not a big beer drinker. So what I did, and that's just part of it, right? I'm not here to twist her arm into drinking beer. That's not what I'm here for. But on the other side of it, I did try to include her into my hobby. So we made wine together. Yeah. I kind of find.
I was going to say.
Yeah, totally.
Or cider.
We actually did a few batches of wine, and it's turned out great. But the cool part was really just seeing how excited she was when she made it. Right. And that wow, and it was that moment when it was she was as excited about making something as I am when I make beer or when I make wine. And so it's that experience, and then sharing that with others I think is really the point of the hobby and why we're here. But I think that, it doesn't have to be beer. It's just it's about doing something together and doing something with somebody who is creative.
Absolutely. I mean, ciders and meads are another, like, a lot of times a gateway, brewing experience for women too.
Yeah.
Because it seems more approachable and it's more sometimes their style.
Yeah, totally. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting. I'm kind of a hacker type brewer. I'm not sure how many of episodes of my podcast you've heard, but a lot of our shows are focused on the technological aspect of homebrewing, and I'm not expecting her to sit out there with a soldering iron. But on the other side of it is that there are definitely girls out there that are into it. There are definitely opportunities to kind of share all of those experiences. And to be honest, I'm in total agreement with you. I think that other perspectives on the way that and approaches to brewing are, I think, what's kind of needed, and how we push the envelope of where we are in brewing. So I think those are all great tips.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I wanted to, attend the competition and I wanted to attend the festival, where could I find information and all of that kind of stuff?
You would just go to SheBrew.beer.
Okay.
So instead of .com, it's .beer.
Yep. I'm homebrewing DIY.beer. We're the same.
Nice.
So,
perfect.
yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So the information for the festival and for the homebrew comp is there. So, and for the homebrew comp, it's a link to like the main competition website. And if people wanted to, we have plenty of room for judges right now, as far as we're still looking for more judges. I've been soliciting all of our pro brewers to do that as well.
Yeah. I would say it's always judges and stewards, right?
Oh yeah. Well, stewards, we do all right with stewards. We have we run a couple. We help out with the NHC fairly frequently, and we do the Fall Classic, which is like last year. I think we had about 400 entries for Fall Classic. So we actually have a pretty good chunk of people within our club that are pretty seasoned stewards. So we don't have to worry too much about that. But we can always use more judges. In a perfect world for me, I would love to have every beer judged by 3 people.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is a BJCP sanctioned competition, correct?
100%. Yep.
Awesome. And part of that sanction is that you have to have a BJCP judge, at least one for every category, right?
Oh yeah, and we definitely don't have any problem with that.
Yeah, but still, that's always a struggle when you're looking for judges, right? Is not just getting judges, but getting good judges.
Yeah. Does your club teach BJCP?
My personal club, I would say, is more of a social club.
Gotcha.
We meet at a brewery. There's an average meeting is anywhere from 15 to about 25 people at a meeting.
Okay.
And really, it's more of the first 2 parts of your meeting, where we just kind of do the potluck of beer and we kind of talk about any club business. We tend to not really get into a lot of education.
Gotcha.
We're not really set up in that way. But there are other clubs. This is Colorado. We're definitely a lot of brew clubs.
Yeah, there's a lot of beer going on.
Yeah, totally. And it's the same idea, right? If education's what you want, there's actually one just up in Broomfield that's a great club as well, and they have that education portion. Nice. It's just that the particular club that I'm in is not so focused on that. That being said, it still is something where there's, of those 25, I would say there's probably 5 or 6 of them that are BJCP certified. So it is definitely something that, for as long as I've brewed, I'm kind of shocked I haven't done it yet.
Well, and the reason I ask is because I think that's one of the reasons why we do have quite a few BJCP judges, is because our club also does a BJCP class every year. So we open that up to quite a few people. Now, mind you, I would guess that probably 20 to 25% of the people that take the class actually take the test, although I think that's improving. And I will admit I was that person. I took the class. I enjoyed it. I learned a ton. I never took the test. I've run many competitions, but I've never taken the test.
That's awesome. It's something where I've competed a lot. I've got some gold medals under my belt. And every time I bust out the BJCP guidelines, and I know the tricks. Go to the guidelines. The guidelines matter, right? And but it's something where I've just never taken the time, and I got to be honest. Maybe that's something I should make a goal, is actually to just go to at least get through the class and then make the test the next goal.
There you go.
There we go. We obviously, I said it a little earlier. If you've listened to this podcast at all, we love to talk about the technology of brewing and people's brewing setups. We're definitely more of an equipment focused podcast. I'd love to hear about your brew setup and what it looks like today and kind of how it got there.
Yeah. Well, I brewed out of a converted Widmer keg and a Coleman cooler for probably 12 years. And I brewed a lot of damn good beers out of that thing. But finally upgraded last year to a 10-gallon Blickman system.
Those are really nice systems. I'm super jealous. I still brew out of a keg, so nothing wrong with that either.
Here's what I'll say about that. My husband and I actually met at the Oregon Brew Crew. He joined 1 month after I'd been there for a year or two. And we have our garage is converted into like a private tap room. So we have 11 taps and a walk-in.
Man, that's quite the setup of your house.
When people come to our house, I say, this is what happens when two homebrewers get married and don't have children.
Yeah, I totally have kids. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I make great beers out of the Coleman cooler, and I am all about a converted keg. But I felt like, since this is our like one main hobby, why not eventually like upgrade to something really nice?
Absolutely, and
it has been really nice.
Yeah, and it's the little things, right? When you have equipment that's actually made for the purpose of brewing, there's just a certain level of like headaches that you don't deal with.
That's so true. So blowouts where you have to run to the store to get some piece of equipment.
Yeah, and that is, yeah, and to me it's like my setup is super simple. I've got a converted keg. I still actually I'm brewing a bag, and I started out with a different setup than that, but I've tried to go as simple as possible. And for me, it's like, to me about the brewing day, and you could probably attest to this, is that, as long as I can get my day down to being a smooth process that keeps things efficiently done, and because I have kids, it just makes it so that it's something where it's like, it's not such a chore to get a brew day in, and I'm always ready to brew. Like I've got 55-pound bags of grain and all that stuff ready to go. And if I can squeeze a brew day in, I'm going to get one in. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just kind of how I keep at it. What kind of beers are you brewing now? What are you into?
Most recently, our neighbors also help us drink the beer, thank God, because we actually only have 9 beers on tap. We keep sparkling water on one, and we've actually taught the 9-year-old next door how to make soda, so we've given him his own tap.
Very lucky kid.
That's right. But the neighbors love lighter beers, so we usually have at least 2 IPAs on, and I've been doing a regular rotation on a pale. And I really make my own vanilla extract, so I have a vanilla bourbon porter that I like to keep on tap as well. But yeah. We like to do the standards, and then we just like to do just crazy stuff too.
Yeah. What would you say is the craziest beer you've ever made?
Oh gosh. There's been a few. The rhubarb Berliner Weiss was pretty wild. But we did just on a lark. We did a black hazy, which actually came out more like a CPA, but it was pretty great. The one that's on my list that I haven't made, which is probably going to be pretty wild, is a squid ink goza.
What is that?
So I want to do a goza, but make it black. We have a local pirate club in town, and we had a pirate party at the house one night, and we wanted to do a collaboration with them. So I was trying to come up with something fun for the pirates. And I thought, well, how cool would that be to do a squid ink goza? I actually come from the restaurant business. I worked in restaurants for a long time. I've seen squid ink pasta. I've never seen a squid ink beer, so that would be something to see. And it's out there. I Googled it, but yeah.
I'm sure it's happened. Yeah, but the cool thing about squid ink is it doesn't taste like anything. So, but don't get it on your hands at all.
Oh, that's good to know. That's really good to know.
Well,
I would definitely ask that you encourage any female homebrewers you come into contact with to enter. We've gotten bigger every year. So in 2018, we had 129 entries. Last year, we had 215.
That's awesome.
Respectable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very respectable size of a competition. Yeah. To be honest, you talked about another competition that was your fall festival, I believe, and that you said that had 400 in it. And to be honest,
we did almost 400. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that, and you're looking at such a specific competition geared around the SheBrew competition, to have a couple hundred entries shows that there's really growth and encouragement in that. And that's just great to see.
Absolutely. We just want to keep growing it.
Awesome. So yes, if you're a girl or and identify as a girl, and you want to be a part of the SheBrew competition, and you're listening to this podcast, head over to the SheBrew.beer, get more information, plan your beer now, because you got to get it in. It's when do you have to have beers in by?
They have to be in Portland on February 21st. So you got enough time to brew and ship.
Yeah, that you got to have enough time to brew and ship, and it's the first week of January. You could definitely knock out a beer by then. There's enough time now. Yeah. So, hey, Jenn, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about this really great event. I'm super excited to talk about it and to encourage others to be a part of it. It's really something that when I saw online the competition, I was like, hey, this is something I want to talk about on the show, definitely, and be a part of. So I'm really glad you allowed us to talk about it.
Well, thanks for the invite. I was more than happy to come on. Yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Jenn for taking the time to be on this week's show. If you'd like more information about the SheBrew Festival and competition, head over to SheBrew.beer. Once again, that's SheBrew.beer. Also, please support the show by heading over to patreon.com/homebrewing DIY. Your support keeps the show coming to you every week for free. So please, please, please give us some support. Well, that's it for this week, and we'll see you next week on Homebrewing DIY.